Um, okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Odds Pods. I am here today joined with a gaggle of guests. That is a very small gaggle. We are here with Christina over here. Christina and I have a long-term connection where we are both Americans living abroad in Holland. Christina is a therapist, but she also is into astrology. So sometimes we talk about whimsical things and align our opinions based on our magical touch. And then I also welcome Amanda, who's from my hometown in Joplin, Missouri. I'm always appreciative of Amanda's assistant as my virtual assistant. So I appreciate her support in this capacity. But I love her opinion and I love to hear her stories. And then I invite Kadisha here. Recently, Kadisha and I have worked together for years. In the past, recently, I just saw a message from Kadisha where she is going to limit her time spent on Meta, which is an interesting topic for me because that's exactly what I'm doing. So today's call for Odds Pods is not just talking about astrology, it's really covering content creation, social media management in the coming period for this year, and how we can better protect ourselves and really refine our digital habits online. So I'm welcoming everybody. Thanks for being here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Instead of doing a round of introductions, I feel that the readers will definitely get a chance to know who you are and share your flavor when you're sharing your testimonies. First, Kadisha, I just want to open with you and talk to you about what you're experiencing now living in the DC area that you're in. You're feeling maybe a little bit tense because we're like, what, 9 days out before King Trump's coronation? Um, so I'm wondering what is driving you to want to leave Meta, being that you're a successful creator and you have a brand there that you're managing, and you're also on TikTok. So what are your plans for
Mhm.
the future after you leave Meta?
So I'm in the process of like deleting and deactivating the account, and they are being super facetious about it. Like used to, it's easy to find. They've moved it. Now you have to go through all this trial tribulation. It's taking people 10 to 15 minutes to like delete the account. They don't want people to leave. So my personal decision is that, all the money that he put into like trying to lobby to get TikTok banned, and now that he's being exposed, then if it's data and security, okay, well, Cambridge Analytica, like been exposing our data and selling us off, and been doing this for years. Like I said, I looked at my account the other day and I was like, man, I've been here since 2008. That is a long time on a platform, but from 2008 till now, it's changed drastically. So, two reasons for me personally why I'm just like, why I'm really like, up. But then they put us in a bind because I can't fully like kill Meta because I have to keep WhatsApp. Because of my community that I live in, my townhouse community. We're only on here. We're such a immigrant population because I live in Maryland. So that's the way that the group has decided. So I have to keep one to keep what's happening in my neighborhood and community. But as far as Facebook has been concerned, he with them cutting back DEI and DEI initiatives, and he's taken more of that right wing perspective of like DEI must die and stuff, and they don't really even understand what it is. To me personally, it's just a feel another term for like anti blackness. Just like oh woke. They have no clue. Anytime someone's like that, I'm like, what's woke? No one has been able. I don't say no one. Certain groups have never been able to tell me clearly what woke means, and how again they've hijacked this, from a community, from there. So him pulling that back and then also pulling out the fact checking, which means that people can now say whatever. They also kind of cherry pick whose accounts and what type of accounts get banned or censored or this. And I mean, same thing when the other guy bought, the X1, the media he bought, I was out. I delete all my stuff because I was like, I'm not even dealing there. So I feel like it's going on that same level. Two peas in a pod. They're working too closely aligned. Too much, all him fighting and lobbying, and it's super frustrating. That the politicians who voted against it are on TikTok and they're like, oh, we never thought it would get this far. Well, now it is. And so we'll see what the Supreme Court does. I don't have any like strong case either way. Even living out here in the district, next week it is going to happen. Because again, if we saw the election, Black women, 93% of us chose to vote, believe it or right. We've said as a collective, we're good. We're falling back. We're not marching. We're not organizing. It's super quiet. We've decided that there's going to be a day of brunch. So people are, little pockets of, I said, well, I am not going into the city, but if there's a brunch in maybe Baltimore or Bowie, where I can go hang out, whatever. We as a group, we're just done. We're over it. It's just, again, we've done a group project for years and years and years. Everybody benefits but us. And then people want to leave us behind. But now it's funny, on social media, they're like, mad that Black women are like, we're good. We're not. Okay, y'all do you. We really are just like, we're over it. So whatever is going to happen and whatever they voted to do, for me as a Black person inside the Black community, is not a new condition. So some of the we've gone through some of the most terrible atrocities. So anything they could throw out is not something that's going to devastate us. Like, oh my God, So there's not panic, I don't think, amongst the Black community from what I've seen inside of my own community as far as what's going to happen. It's just kind of like, okay, well, let's see, and then let's see how we're going to pivot. So not super stressed about it. Like I'm not. So again, as a creator, most of my clients aren't on Facebook. I would say I would keep up with people, that I went to school with, and, here and there. But the less I use it, it's not really triggering, but it's too many ads. It's too many like targeted stuff that I'm seeing that I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So my preferred means is to stay on TikTok. Even if they ban it, it's a couple things that people do. It's not going to just completely disappear. I mean, because it's like we can use a VPN, we could use a whole bunch of different things to still have access to it. But I also am trying to build my platforms offline, like Substack, looking into WAP, because as a digital content creator, my niche is helping people write their memoirs. So putting my stuff where I can kind of control my videos and how I have out, but I also see the benefit of building communities inside of like other platforms. But again, I've had my best success on TikTok because it's normal people like turn on cameras and be like, hey, this is what's happening, or hey, and that's where I feel like I've got my news. That's where I feel like I've got an unbiased approach to where the influences are there, especially during like election time. They're on the floor. They're like, here's where we're here. The people with the fires. This is my fire. One thing that was frustrating, there was a Black family moving out and the news captured it and was like, looters are looting people. And they're like, no, we are moving my grandma out. So they go on to counter the lie, from that. So that's super frustrating that, okay, mainstream media always attaches something negative and like, oh, look at these Black people looting. But they're like, we are literally moving my grandma. Come in, look at us. This is our family on the photo. So I like that it counters that because, we don't ever get to control the negative. And unfortunately, negative surrounding like Black people is always negative. It's always something terrible. It's always, here. But now I think TikTok and other ones are like, no, this is me. This is here. This is us. Actually showing the truth of the matter. And they don't like that. They don't like that they can't control the media. And now on the TikTok side, people are mad. They're very mad. So they're like, we're deleting Meta. So they're recording it. They've got a F Zuck is the hashtag that's going around. So they're like, put that on stuff. So there's a lot of anger there on there, frustration, irritation, because we're not being heard. We're not being, valued as our voice and opinion. And so now we'll just pull our support back and see what happens.
Yeah, uh, there's a lot of good points that you made there. I think also with the upcoming TikTok ban, we over here in Europe are going, well, TikTok is no longer to be fun if the Americans aren't there. The Americans are what make that app entertaining, right? So, and admittedly, I have been receiving my social media downloads with news updates since 2017, because it was in 2016 where I was like, do you know what? This Cambridge analytical thing was like not yet really formalized, but I was already on that on that train
Yeah.
back then because I could just feel that there was something that we were not seeing, that we were being
Yep.
fed. Now we can see it was just propaganda, right?
Yep.
And we're still being fed propaganda. And now it's like it's a bit out of control. But
Yeah.
what they offer now, these TikTok bans, regulations against social media, it's too little too late. These
Yep.
things should have been installed back in those creations of 2007 when I
Yep.
joined Facebook, for instance. We
Yeah.
should understand that as users, we're going onto these sites, these platforms to be entertained, not to be informed. It
Yep.
is a social space to collect resources and engage with community, but it's still full of entertainment. And now we've
Mhm.
created this reality for ourselves where we are all actually materializing a very real simulation that we have to live in because of these digital spaces, which are now harmful and
Yep.
toxic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on that note, I'll leave on such an optimistic cliffhanger and turn this over to my dear friend Christina, who has some things or two to share about safety, cybersecurity, also from the American perspective. Like she and I share notes over the past 4 years of like, did you see that? Because I don't think that that's the news that Americans are watching right now. Are you reading this? So it's been a really interesting social experiment to watch the trends of news and discuss what's being discussed in America that then maybe 2 days later is depicted in a different manner and a different light. Like what you were saying, a lot of mainstream media, legacy media, is force feeding us these horrible headlines. And when you look into it, it's just too soon to be reporting these headlines. You need
Mhm.
at least a couple of days for people to do their investigation and figure shit out.
Yep.
So it's like we really need to encourage people to just press pause and walk away from the internet. So I'm over here on my campaign of less internet, more touching the earth. But
Yeah.
I'm going to shut up now and leave it to Chris.
Hi, I'm really concerned about AI and what that's going to do, regardless of what platforms still exist. Um, I started using Facebook back in 2006 when it was mostly marketed for American college students, I think from 2004 to 2006 or 2007. And then it became popular among Americans and then the greater world. And I don't know, I missed the use of it back then was just kind of finding your social circles, finding parties, and the group functions as well, like having shared interests with people. And now, as an expat living in Europe, I find that to be just the main purpose that it serves for me now. But um, yeah, now we're suggested all of these groups of like even the most obscure interests that I could have. It's just suggesting a group for it. And I can look at some of these groups and I'm like, I don't even think a human made this. And with all of the ads as well, it's overwhelming. And I appreciate Facebook for the groups because I've been able to be put in touch with people like Audra, for example, when I was looking for some work when I was a student here like 12 years ago, and she was advertising that she needed an au pair, and then we were put in touch that way. And I've made some friends mostly through the groups as well. But um, when Instagram came up, I think that was like 2012 or something. I thought this is just Facebook with less words. Why would I have this? This is Facebook without with and I thought like this is also for very artsy people, and I'm not like really artsy. I don't have like a fancy camera or anything. And then it became more and more mainstream to the point where I'm looking at, businesses that just say DM us on Instagram and they don't even have an email, and I'm just like, okay, I guess I'm just not going to shop here. And I miss the kind of old school functionality of, yeah, online spaces where you can just um, have some level of anonymity when you're interacting with a business or a person. And um, yeah, and I find for myself personally, I'm a self-employed psychologist living in the Netherlands, and I'm in private care, and so it feels dystopian and hokey that I need to advertise healthcare online. And like that's why I moved here, to kind of get away from the whole dystopian healthcare system. But I mean, I'm not operating under insurance. I'm in private practice. So um, for better or for worse, I have to market myself. And so I'm going to have to use so, and every person that I've interacted with in person is just like, what's your Insta? What's your Insta? And I'm like, I don't like, I opened Instagram for the first time about a year or two ago. And I just had this earth-shattering anxiety about it. And I had no previous experience on it. And if I could explain what I think, like I was fed the main content of like the Netherlands, and I was just horrified. This was like 2023. It looked like, if you could envision like a cross between the Kardashians and white nationalists, like that was the main content of the Dutch like Instagram pages, where I'm just like, this is the crap I moved to get away from. And like the Euro version of it, of like what people envision, like, I don't know, influencer.
It's an MTV Cribs in
Yeah,
Europe.
and like they had celebrities in Holland with pools, and I'm like, nobody has a swimming pool here. Like, what the fuck is this? I just got so much anxiety from having it open. I was like, I don't even want to look at this, and I'm horrified that this is also what young people in the Netherlands, like, this is just the main. So yeah, I just cut away from it, and everything that's just been changing so fast. And I with this advent of what's happening now, I'm kind of looking forward to more people moving away from it. As a side note here, I guess this is important. So I had to read this book a couple of years ago. It's The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. I did my postdoc 2020 to 2023, which was an excellent era, as you all remember, for COVID and just the earth going crazy. But I did my postdoc in digital privacy and identity, and everything I read scared the living shit out of me. And I was kind of paralyzed. I wasn't able to really make anything from that. Of course, it was a hard time for everyone anyway in the pandemic. But with each passing year, I just think that things are getting more and more chaotic, uncertain, and like, I don't want to preemptively say like we're scaring ourselves, but I feel this undercurrent of something bad is going to happen. And um speaking to what you said earlier, about how that I someone said something about the news and how it's really, I don't remember if we were already recording at that point, but how the news mischaracterizes a lot. Yeah, and I'm not on TikTok, but from what I know from people on TikTok, that's what they say, is like everyone I know that's on TikTok says, well, I get the truth from TikTok. And during my postdoc, it was drilled into me that, oh, like, TikTok is garbage, there's a bunch of lies on it, like, this is bad for kids. And I'm just like, and I'm telling Audra this all the time. I'm just like, be careful, like, with your kids on TikTok and all this stuff. You don't know like what people are doing with that information. But it's interesting because people who kind of have my more fearful attitude toward TikTok are the ones that have never touched it, that are just really afraid of it. And I'm afraid of it for, like, of course, for foreign foreign powers that be. I don't know what they do, but then also for for the mental health effects.
Yeah.
Those are clear. Like the
like training us to our
yeah,
ADD.
yeah, the like I
extension
mean,
spans.
even with YouTube or whatever, like, I'm in bed sometimes and I'll wake up like half asleep doing this, and I'm just like, and I have to kind of like throw my phone, and I'm like, what am I doing? This is as good as having TikTok. And that's one of the reasons that I told myself I wouldn't have it. And yeah, so it's a tough era that we're coming into. But anyway, I feel really grateful for moments like today when I have a friend visit and we touch grass, or in our case, touch concrete together.
And cook a meal and eat together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is more about my 2025 project and writing the book, The Social Experiment, where I am promoting healthier digital habits and talking about, from the recovering addict perspective, of what it's been like to heal my own device addiction and codependency on the internet and on people, places, and things that are inside of my devices and not in front of my face. So that's been like years in process. I realized that I had a really bad addiction. It was roughly around 2018. So for me to actually bring the awareness in and then take the time to change my own habits, it's been very eye-opening because I've learned a lot, and I've only learned a lot through the mistakes that I've made. And technology is changing. So now I'm like super dependent upon using ChatGPT because I'm really using it as like my editor who's helping me with creating my publication strategy, right? And I'm super dependent upon that. But then I start to have guilt and I'm like, oh gosh, this is impacting my ability as a writer because I'm not using my brain critically. I'm just relying upon a robot to do that for me. So this is what I'm talking about. Like the things that we say right now are going to be mostly irrelevant in 6 months or a year from now as well. So we have to stay vigilant, but we also need to stay adaptable and mobile. And I just deleted Twitter this morning for the first time. It took me a while because I had to find my password. But I operate my Twitter account under my pen name, so I'm there talking about, sluttery and soft porn things. So it's been interesting to leverage two different audiences and now bring an audience under a pen name that I was writing in a completely different genre and put them onto my Blue Sky account because I really did actually leverage some of my followers. So this has taken a long time. Like I've been writing this book for the last 3 years actively about how I'm reforming my own social media habits, and I'm sharing that story now on Substack.
Mhm.
But it's been a learning process, and the things that I learned 3 years ago are not necessarily what's going to be working now. So I'm thanking
Mhm.
everyone for giving me their testimonies.
Yeah,
Amanda?
can I make one quick point?
Yes.
I think it's super interesting with TikTok because it kind of kicked around 2018, right? So it's not old, right? So Facebook has been around, like we said, 2006, whatever. Instagram got sued for knowingly pushing terrible content to young viewers and stuff like that. There's a whole paper trail, but I think it's interesting that okay, all this stuff goes, gets put on TikTok like in a form of projection, which because again, it's not American-based companies from Singapore. But where was all the fight and energy and lobbying against the kids protection these 20, 30 plus years that this one has been dominant across the board? If competition comes up, he's quick to buy it up and gobble it, quick to buy it up, like he's done. So it was, on five. But again, I think the biggest part is that they've tried to buy it. They said no. And then now it's pushing this like it's harmful for kids. Yeah. Now, do I agree? I do 100% agree because what it does is they can't replicate the algorithm. So as you're scrolling, it'll send you videos that you like, So I find myself on different sides of TikTok, whereas let's say young people are on there and they're looking at fashion or whatever, makeup and stuff like that. It'll show them those things. And sometimes the imagery, isn't there. But I think that the other component that the Instagram doesn't have, there's not a human person behind there telling their own story, their own experience, there. But I just, again, think it's super interesting of like, okay, we have proof that you've been sued, you released our own information and everything that we have. They do experiments. I don't have a cat, but I can do cat food, cat, and all of a sudden ads on Instagram face going to be sending me stuff to cat food. So at this point in time, who should I be more afraid of? Like, okay, well, y'all already got the stuff. The data's out there because in-house, the call is coming from inside the house, but it's not, enough here. But then also people are pissed because it's like, we can't get gun control. We can't get stuff, people coming in here, but y'all can band together and be like, we're going to ban TikTok as a national security, so it doesn't make sense, so a lot of people be like, make this make sense. And I think people are like waking up to like, stuff that's force fed and we don't question it, to now people are starting to truly genuine question, but not only question, go to the origins of where this comes from or where the source comes from. So I just wanted to kind of add that little component because it's not old. TikTok was as old as Facebook, and then we've seen it's not that old. We also saw during the pandemic, because we were all home, a major shift where people were on there talking about their anxieties, their fears. It was a form of therapy because I know I did it. Like I got COVID during the pandemic prior to the shots and all the stuff. And it was terrible. I was teaching high school, got it from school, came home, passed to my husband, and I got to document that experience. But people were giving me like real life, oh, try this, hang in there, from there. Whereas, I could put a picture, oh God, yeah, I got COVID on, Facebook, and people were like, okay, thoughts and prayers. But it was a genuine like community that, that surrounded, hey, just checking on you. Are you okay? Get your orange juice. I know it's scary, but don't panic. I feel like it was like a form of therapy that got people through because I don't have to see this person in real life to make a connection. And I think that that's what he can't replicate. And if he can't replicate it, they're like, we're going to try to get rid of it, but now it really has become a good means The other component is that you have millions of Americans making a lot of money that they wouldn't have made in any other platform with their content, their own gifts and talents, where people stand to lose $50,000, $60,000 in income, $1 million in income from just what they've generated from there. So now you ban it. Now you're taking money from people's hands. So it's so multi-level that I don't think it could, be that component. And my husband, he does cybersecurity and all the stuff as well for corporate America. So he kind of tells me on the inside when those hacks happen, and then the government finds out they have to pay. Okay, it's real hush hush, Experian, yeah, just sent me a check for $25 because they got hacked and my data was, so you supposed to be protecting my credit score, y'all gotta have my stuff's out there, so
Get you a
but
check?
I got a PayPal last week for like $15 because they got sued and from the data breach, and so they had to pay the people back. And from here, so yeah, so I PayPal. I don't use that often. I got a payment from PayPal, and then I went to trace it back to find out there's a class action lawsuit that they lost because our data got breached and hacked. So many American companies that told protection are getting hacked left and right. So TikTok is the least of our worries. If Experian, who's supposed to be checking my credit, you got hacked, my stuff's out here. Like, is there somebody gonna pay some bills or something? Because what's on there? Like, but yeah, we're worried about TikTok, so yeah, it's just like that whole bait and switch and, from there. And I've always been a nerd. I love technology. So I'm always quick to like, let me learn about it and let me see about it. Cause I don't want to have any surprises coming about it. So when ChatGPT was out there, people are like, oh my gosh, I was just kind of playing with it, just like, oh, yeah, it's a useful tool. The other replicas come about for me as a budding filmmaker. Okay, let me just play with some scenes. Maybe I could make my own film if I could use AI or little scenes from AI that may never be seen or made because the content I made, people tell me, oh, that's not going to sell. Nobody wants to watch that. So I think it's just like, the seesaw isn't real balanced where, up here it's like, we got a dominance of a 30-year dominance in this area versus these last couple years, from there. So it's just interesting.
Yeah. Amanda, I always appreciate hearing your diverse view. You have a different take because you're not actually creating content. You're just a normal person doing normal things, using social media in the normal way to communicate and engage with your community and to keep up with your friends and family. How is and you're also a freelancer as well, right? So you have to put a little bit of a bit of your brand out there. I know that in Missouri, our mutual Missouri friends are really heavy users of Facebook, and not a lot of them were on Instagram. I joined Instagram, for instance, in 2012, and the Americans didn't get there until like 5 or 6 years later because they're heavy users of Facebook. Over here in Europe, we all use WhatsApp to communicate. And I know when I was trying to reach Amanda, I'm like, I need you on WhatsApp because that's where my brain is. And this is. But now I'm also trying to plug out and use more Signal platform. So Amanda, I just want to hear from you. Like, are you noticing any of these trends shift and change? Like, how do you feel this is influencing your social bubble?
So I think first to Christina's statement she made when really at the very beginning of all this is that we're all here because of Meta. So, and recognizing those good things it did bring, for myself coming out of a really controlling marriage, I was ready to get on social media that I wasn't allowed on before for, the 19 years I was married. So having that opportunity, I was able to connect with new people because I was getting outside of that bubble. And that's where I met, many of my friends that are now friends here in the Joplin area. It's where I was able to get involved with supporting the communities that experience homelessness, the LGBTQIA, all of those kind of, we have a pretty big mutual aid support system here in the Joplin region. And so I'm able to stay up with them of donations, events, et cetera, et cetera. So for myself, from when I joined, which would have been in very, very late 16 until November of this year, I was still very political with my feels on Facebook. Wasn't a point anymore. In the sense of I blocked the people that had always enraged me or irritated me about it. And I basically went over to Signal and Blue Sky for the political parts of my need from social media. It is how I see it. I still am very active in Facebook, but it's a lot of sharing lost and found cats and dogs, stuff about the mutual aid, stuff that the homeless shelters are asking for, local businesses that I find either I've used and liked, or I find useful, or I want to help them grow their local business. So I use it much more for that community effort. And I don't know if I would get rid of it right now in the Joplin area, but again, and I think when I eventually move to Chicago, I will likely stay on it a little bit to just kind of see those local things and find the local humane society, animal shelter, homeless community, those kind of things that drive me and that fill my cup. But I definitely deal with it differently with the politics. I've disengaged almost exclusively. I have a few friends that share some memes, but I have blocked people that I have unfriended. I have all of that kind of stuff because for me, for the next 4 years, there's no value in arguing that national political scene because it's happening. It's going to happen. We're not going to storm the Capitol. We're not going to try to stop, because. So definitely focusing on local. When I do see local candidates that kind of are either doing things I could support or not support, I may share or comment. But in general, I'm using it now for what fills me and what I need it for, which is that community, that friendship, that supporting local business, that kind of thing.
Do you think that they will ever have a replacement to Facebook? Do you think there will ever be an app to replace it?
I don't think so. I think it's just going to morph into something, make something new. No.
I think Zuckerberg just kind of aligns this to make it part of his Truth Social platform. He's just basically developed his own platform that's no longer a free space for freedom of speech. So we're all just voyeurs and sitting ducks, right? But there is this, like Amanda just really well represented, that community aspect and ecosystem that we are so dependent upon. But what I see is that you can create that in other bubbles without even having to use apps. You just kind of have to go back to the way you thought in 1980, 1990s, right? It's like reading flyers on the YMCA door or whatever it is. So I've got lots of tips and tricks and suggestions.
I got a psychology client recently. I put my flyers out in a building and I was contacted by someone that said, I saw your flyer and I knew that I had to contact you. I'm like, yes, old school stuff works still.
Yeah, you remember the call here. I'm like, I'm about ready to do that because I just really appreciate also word of mouth referrals. Like, where did you? Oh, I don't even know her name, but it was a friend of mine, my cousin, who then told me that there was this girl over here teaching yoga for burnout. I'm like, oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. But we also got to think about the generation gap too, because Gen Z is not on Facebook. It's primarily boomers and Xers, maybe some elder millennials. So somebody made a great point and said if Zuckerberg focused solely on what he was doing to make it better instead of trying to dominate all stuff, again, he could have been ahead of the game. Someone made a great point. We all went to Blockbuster growing up, right? We mentioned Blockbuster, Gen Z. They like, what? So they didn't change with the times. And unfortunately, like Redbox and the starting of streaming took them out of the game. So again, it's only so many boomers. It's only I'm a Gen X. It's only Xers, so you didn't counter for your Gen Zs, your alphas and the other ones coming down, the pipeline who were born with a phone in the hand, where we went outside and played. We know the human connection component, the area that they struggle with the human connection component. So, I think again, those other means you can't, be there. He doesn't have the Gen X, like he doesn't have the younger ones. They're not on Facebook, they have no plans to ever be there, which means that, hey, there's a whole right for the territory. Try this, try that, try that. I don't even think Gen Z's on Twitter like that. Like my son, he'll be 28 next month. So I asked Izzy, where do you get your news? He says mainly between like LinkedIn and TikTok. And he's an engineer, there in Kansas City. So it's interesting. He's got a Facebook, but he rarely posts. Like I'll tag him something that I'm in, and then he'll be like, well, thanks, Mom. But he's not, nor is his core group and my nephew's 21. My nephew definitely ain't on there. He's everywhere else. So I think, again, it's interesting demographic wise, we have to talk about that as well. If your core is boomers, ex elder, okay, what do these groups have in common that you don't have the younger ones and they're not coming to you?
It's also like the Gen X, no, the Gen Zs and the millennials, they all use Reddit and Quora and all of these forums
Yeah, yes.
in as an avatar.
Yeah.
You don't use your real details. You don't have a profile page. You don't put shit up there about you. And you can go in and make a comment and say whatever you want, and nobody really gives a shit, you know? So
Yeah.
there's different ways of using social media where you can protect your privacy more.
Yeah.
I think the younger generations, they simply just know these better than people over age 40.
Yeah. True.
Do you all remember when I think YouTube would probably be, because now it's a social media platform, but like I think that was really, I mean it's morphed into one, but that was really OG, I think. Well, maybe MySpace in terms of the layout, but YouTube is now a social media platform of sorts, and
Yep.
it people that were kind of the originals on it, they've made a lot of fame for themselves. But I remember when YouTube came out, I was really young. I was like in, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, something like that. But then I remember looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, like it's, my brother he was, making videos. He was on a TV production team at school and like putting things on it from time to time and, like making little funny short things. He didn't stick with it. He wound up going to school for audio engineering. But like, I remember back then the general attitude, even as a child, like he would sometimes be like, do you want to be in this? And I'm like, gosh, no, like I don't want to be on the internet. Like it was really, even as a kid, I had this kind of distance from it. But then, growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, we also had, there was a meme that spoke to me about this. It was like, your parents in the 90s don't talk to strangers on the internet. And then it's like your parents in the 2010s and 2020s, like, um freedomeagle.whitehouse says Hillary invented AIDS. Like, and parents telling you that, like, it's kind of that. I find it interesting that like in the beginning there was this big kind of reservation around putting yourself out there, and now it's so normal that everyone, and I wonder like has it changed us to make us all like, um I don't want to say losing, loss of self-preservation or that we've been so deprived of like connection in real life that it's like kind of forced, like forced intimacy upon us in a, as you said, like in a, what is it, in a simulation that we don't have any kind of control over, and we don't really know who's looking at us, and we don't really know what the information's being used for. And yeah, it feels like nothing's sacred anymore. And like, speaking to the point of like organizing and things like mutual aid, it's like, someone that I work with who wanted to make co-housing for women contacted me today and said, I'm not doing it anymore. We have to take down all the social media. We never got to a point of marketing that because, and I think it was this underlying feeling of like the powers that be are not going to be kind to this. And she really just closed it down today, which is, it's really disheartening because I think it was a great idea, but it sucks now that like it seems that the political tone is to the point where not just narratives are being funneled, but whole narratives are like, okay, we need to do something different and do this offline and kind of, go back to our roots of how we might organize or connect with people because it's maybe becoming unsafe to be so visible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think a crazy point is with kids being wrapped into being an influencer. This news reporter went to a classroom at kindergarten and was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Almost 90% of them were like, influencer. I want to be an influencer. So that wasn't even a thing for us. Oh, a doctor, lawyer, policeman. So kindergarten, the 5 and 6 year old babies, they're like, this is it, this is what I see. But then too, so many parents have their kids on there, like, okay, from the the conception to the, you know, the crazy stuff with these, what is it, the gender reveals and all this stuff, all the way to the birth, you know, all the stuff. And then this, your
The
whole life has been on
exploitation.
there. I think, again, what is sacred, you know,
Yeah. And
what is private, what do we don't, you know. So it's just super interesting, again, of like how it's shifting, but who's kind of keeping up and who's, how are we doing? Because I think we have to teach our own kids, you know, from there. And I tell people, I'm glad I grew up in an area with no social media. I'm glad I went outside and played until the sunlight came on. I rode my bike. That was our social media. Wherever the bikes were, that's where people was. That's where the friends was, the homies.
yeah.
And hanging out all day because we couldn't get jobs. We were too young, but we hung out, you know. And I think, again, that's what's missing. That, again, that connection, that community. And again, it's almost hard to find without some type of online presence of how do you go. So, you know, if I go to Meetup and I'm like, okay, writers in the DC area, okay, I can go to places, you know, but even then people are still real shy and kind of in their, you know,
Yeah.
bubbles of connecting. I think it really has played a component of how we actually truly connect in real life. You know, and to
Yeah.
me, I'm from Missouri. I tell people I can talk to a stranger. Like, I don't have a new best friend. I'm an extreme extrovert. So you make eye contact, hi. Yeah, that's always been me. But I'm married to a deep introvert. So, you know, where he is not the, you know, the chatty McChat with people he doesn't know. It takes him a little bit longer to warm up, you know, where folks where it's just interesting, you know. So yeah.
Disha, something that you said earlier about kids and what they want to be when they grow up. And well, I don't have kids, so it's interesting to me to hear from people like Audra and other people that have other friends of mine that have kids. But you said that 90% said that they wanted to be influencers. And I think back to when I was younger, a, a lot of the boys in the class would always say that they would want to be like a professional athlete or sports hero or whatever. And I think about like, okay, how is this cultural value transmitted to us that this is a valuable member of society? Of course, it was
Yeah.
through TV. And then, you know, we would have some kids saying they want to be an actor or whatever else. But it's interesting that so much emphasis, especially in American culture, because I don't really see that as much. Maybe it's different nowadays for European kids. Audra could speak to that, but like the performative aspect of just like, well, I'm
Yeah.
watching this, and then this is what I want to do, and it is scary as well because like, well, what kids might watch now, and then what they think
Yeah.
like, okay, this is what an adult does, and this is what I want to do, and like how were those, yeah, how were those cultural values transmitted of like what does it mean to be a, you know, what does it mean to live a good life? What does it mean to be a contributing member of society? What does it mean to yeah, to be an adult, and what do you want to do? Like what was that like? I wonder what people answered before media was so prevalent. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And I know when we grew up, it was, oh, a cop, a teacher, you know, the people we immediately saw as quote unquote good people. Because one thing I want to say about Americans, they need to be perceived as good. So whatever is good at that time, they'll latch on. So for me, I was a single mom. So I didn't let my son have a phone until he was 13, only because he had to leave before me and then got home. So I just want to make sure, quick text message. And so again, with him being an elder, he's an elder Gen Z because he's 97, right? So he's on that cusp. So with Izzy, I was very mindful, but also I think parents use the phones and tablets and stuff as a means to parent their kid. So, you know, me, I've always, Izzy, take that off. We're gonna do this. I've always, but we go to any restaurant, you know, the kids is unlocking the phone. They know more about the phone than you do, but they're replacing it because, oh, they're quiet. I taught for 13 years in DC. I'm now kind of substitute teaching. When I come in, they're like, oh, yes. And so, and they're like, oh, is it hard? The kids are, I said, no, because I tell them, okay, check your Canvas because that's where your work is at. And then now they're on their phones. They are not talking with each other. They're not really goofing off. They're on their phone that whole entire time. And a lot of times if I'm walking around doing role, it's games, it's TikTok. And I want to say, what's
Not
the
to
third
have their
thing?
phones in the classroom.
Yeah. So, because
Is
they're
it,
not banned, they're not taken. Certain charter schools might take them, but as far as public schools, it's too much of headaches, you know. So where I'm at in Maryland, it's 3,000 kids in these schools. You know, it's an insane amount of kids to try to monitor, and then the parents are some of the worst problems because they're like, "Ma'am, can I step out? My mom's calling." ma'am, my dad's calling. You know, I'm just like, all right, do you? I'm a substitute. I'm a glorified babysitter. I was sitting here, yeah, as long as you're not hurting anybody. But it's just been interesting again from
You're
what
on
I
the phone
teach.
all day. The
You're
money's
right.
saved.
Yeah, right. So when I was teaching versus, you know, actually having to monitor and do all that stuff, the phones. Now I took the phones in my classroom, but I also taught an elective they like. So I never really had that issue. I taught them film and video. So it was an interactive, we were out, you know, versus some other content that they may not have liked. So it's just super interesting again. And then I remarried in the pandemic. So my husband came with two, you know, so they're 11, almost 12 and 9. And the almost 12-year-old keeps being like, I want a phone, I want a phone. And I'm like, for what reason? And I think it's peer pressure. He's in middle school. Everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got a phone. And so his parents are Nigerian. So that also is another cultural aspect, where his dad's like, no, not until you're 16. Now I'm going to be curious to see, is he really going to hold the line, you know, till 16, or if mom, but it's interesting, you know, that component, you know, from there. So yeah. So again, just looking at what are our kids doing, what are they into now. Look at any restaurant, the kids is 1 and 2 years old and they got a tablet. And they're even saying that children are coming into kindergarten and they don't even know how to hold a pencil or a crayon. You know, so some of those developmental skills that we had to use growing up, we're losing that at a far greater level than we're gaining, you know. And if people aren't paying attention and they're not parenting or actively parenting the kids, you know, from here. So when we get Samuel and Daniel, I always go to Dollar Tree. I'm an artist. We have paint. We be painting, we be drawing and stuff. And I read a great article where they made this point that said when they did STEM, science, engineering, technology, and math, you cut out the literature and you cut out the arts. That's the education starts becoming wonky when we need all of them. So we didn't have a fine appreciation for art stuff until, again, we're in the pandemic. Well, what kept us through? We watch TV, social media. That's art. This is all still art, you know. So I just think it's super interesting. So I make them use the other side of the brain. Let's paint, let's draw, let's color, tell me a story. I'll have them do little TikTok dances with me, you know, but I'm very interactive. I'm super nosy too. So I'll be asking the questions, because I also think that that's how you know what's going on with your kids. So many parents don't know what's going on with their kids, have no clue. And especially if you let them sleep with their phone in the room, that's just there's a recipe for disaster. And so much of it that I think parents should think about, okay, hey, but they're like, oh, they're quiet. I had a rough day at work. I can come home. They're quiet. But yeah, that may not be the greatest thing they need right now.
Yeah, as a parent, I see that a lot because my girls are 13, 14. So they're choosing their phone over being with mom and dad and having that social and family time. And it's hard. And I let my kids both have their phone and social media at a young age 9. And that was largely selfishly because I knew I was leaving the marriage and I needed to have a daily reason and access to my kids. So I kind of trained them on social media and I let them have everything and I was like, go wild. But that was also when I left my job. So I was really there 50% of my week to police how they were using it. And I'm a big fear monger. So I'm like, girls, every man on the internet wants to hurt you and be very afraid. And they're like, ugh, they're so sick of hearing it, right? Because they know that that's not true, of course. But, you know, I'm here to give them the worst case scenario. If you expect the worst from other people, if you expect that you're going to get bullied, it's not like you're inviting that. You just know that there's a narrow chance that that can happen to you. Then you're prepared for it and you can handle it. So, like I really do feel like logging onto the internet these days, you got to put your boxing gloves on and be prepared for your hazmat suit. And really, it's you've got the dark web and then you have like the really fucked up dark web.
Yeah.
And the two are not interchangeable. Like there's really illegal shenanigans that are happening online that we know nothing about. Um, that's quite scary. So it's like these bunkers that the millionaires are building.
Yeah, true. Very true.
We just don't know. We don't know what is laid out for us in the future with our technology.
You
Yeah.
know, I think it's interesting the point that we've reached now. I feel like we're right, you know, before things change or before people start reeling back, which I expect to happen. It's kind of like, did you guys know the term enshittification?
No, somebody just mentioned this to
Yeah,
me the other
so
day.
this was a term coined a few years ago. It's basically saying that like the utility of these social media apps have already reached they've passed their prime.
Yeah.
And so it's
Mhm.
and so they're losing users. The content is not keeping people engaged. It's mostly ads. It's just they're they're losing the spark for they're losing the reason why people use them, and any new engagement that's driving a lot of it is not for its intended purpose, and it's not for its intended, like it's not the reasons that people wanted to use it. And I think it's an interesting point in time that we're at, or we're kind of passing now, because I feel like, especially in a post-pandemic world, the internet and social media, all the apps combined, we've created this like online ecosystem of this shared global culture that didn't really exist so much
prior.
before. Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe like thousands and thousands of years ago, we were all, really smart, and there were aliens around, and we were reading each other's minds, and like maybe that was like, maybe that was back then, and maybe now like we've reached this
We
point.
can hope.
Yeah, maybe. But there's this kind of collective, like online, and this collective culture, and that's not to say it's a good one either. Like,
Ladies, we have gone way over it. Bad boundaries, and I'm really poor at timekeeping.
Yes.
But this was more just an informal conversation because I really wanted to talk about this content. That's something that is influencing my current writings and what I'm sharing my book about. So my 2025 goals include sharing more tips and tricks on how to maintain our digital safety, our digital health, and it's really coming from the perspective of not an expert. I am definitely not one of those. I'm just here following trends, writing about that, sharing testimonies, and then sharing strengths, testimonies that actually inspire others to want to bring conscious change to their own habits.
thanks for bringing us together. It's been lovely to meet you all.
Okay, ladies, I'm wishing everybody a good day. Enjoy. Tomorrow's the full moon, so look up to the sky, take a picture, send it to me. Make sure that enjoy the moment, light a candle.
And good luck on everyone's social media journey on figuring how to get there.
So I appreciate you guys and all of your support.